Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. We're half an hour early. The goal today was to get started a half an hour early because we have an 11-year-old's birthday party to go to, family member, Uncle Jack's grandson. And so we wanted to get started early and then cut it off a little bit earlier than normal. And so we were going to go at 12:30. Our time right now is 12:53. Leah was like, we're really, really close. And I was like, it only takes us trying to get there a half hour early to get there 7 minutes early. And then she said...
But if sometimes we come in at quarter after, 20 after. So when you do that, we're 30 minutes early.
When you add it together, you see, when it's... yes, so we are a half hour earlier than we normally are.
That's a good point. That's a goal.
So yeah.
It's all about life goals.
We did well today, I think.
And you guys are probably still getting your crumpets and tea. And
I'm going to fix this camera while we're...
And you don't even know we're live right now.
They're coming. Yeah, they're probably waiting. Like, we know those girls.
I wonder if we should save Tommy then for when everybody kind of shows up.
We could do that.
I think we might. We've got a lot to cover today. I don't know how much of it we'll get to. Erdogan met with Mommy Merkel in Germany. I can only... Right now, my nerves can only handle so much nastiness. And I guess while we're waiting for people to come in, I'll tell them
now here it comes.
My most disappointing thing today.
Oh, boy.
Was, and this made me sad, like seriously, the first thing I get on my Twitter, the first thing I see is that Matt Damon is trending. Like, why would Matt Damon be trending? Did he die or something? No, Matt Damon on Twitter is trending because he did a Saturday Night Live skit last night portraying
Brett Kavanaugh.
And I'm not going to show it. I just want to show. Actually, he does look just like Brett Kavanaugh. And I wanted to cry. Because if you watched Brett Kavanaugh,
he was so
genuine and sincere. And here you have Matt Damon with the hair and everything, and they tried to put people behind that looked like it, and he was like, Matt Damon, I just watched a clip of it, and he's like spitting water all over the place, and he's yelling, and basically, yes means no, and he just basically portrayed him to be
a rapist.
And remember, I want you to see this picture.
It's unbelievable that they have found this man guilty. You're supposed to be, in America, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. They found him guilty, even though her story
They're best
has
buds
people
with Harvey Weinstein, by the way.
Refuting.
Weinstein.
Yeah, how about that?
He knew that Harvey Weinstein had done things to Gwyneth Paltrow, but he didn't say anything. Did he do a Saturday Night Live?
It makes me want to vomit.
Did he do a Saturday Night Live skit about himself, living all this whole time knowing that Harvey had done these things?
Yeah, and I would love to be able to tweet out at Matt Damon, but we can't. Do you want to know why? Because they hide all of our tweets.
Matt Damon says he and Ben Affleck knew about Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, so maybe you should have portrayed Harvey Weinstein.
But I'm going to tell you something. This is what the left does. The Women's March now has, oh my gosh, listen, you guys, this is the devil coming with pitchforks and
horns. Meaning you can see him for what he is. He's not coming as an angel of light or a wolf in sheep's clothing.
And so I'm kind of glad about it. But I don't know how I stumbled across this today. I don't even know where it's going to be at. But the Women's March was posting all this stuff like Mitch McConnell, rape apologist. This woman here, she is actually the one that yelled at Jeff Flake on the elevator that got him to call for the FBI investigation. Here she is smiling and laughing. Stop Kavanaugh at Jeff Flake. She is a far left extremist, part of the Women's March, part of the George Soros movement and everything.
They have no shame. Mm-mm. They are willing to pull an innocent man's name through the mud, and they don't care.
Okay.
I can't even imagine that. That's hard for me to wrap my head around.
We could probably go into Tommy but I'm gonna need to we're gonna need to sing something. We don't even have. I'm gonna get out my guitar and start singing something at the end of this show because I am so emotionally I can't right now. I'm at the point where there's like I'm at the victory. I'm getting at the victory, but there's so much overload that we have to detox from it. They're coming at so fast, so hard, so evil, so many lies. That SNL skit is just like my nerves are already raw. What they're doing to Brett Kavanaugh, and I don't care if he's confirmed or not, guys. It's not about a conservative on the Supreme Court. No, it's this monstrous force of evil. Yes. Everyone knowing that he didn't do this thing, when you're calling. Because then there's like, what makes me mad is there are children being raped right now. Yeah. There are women being raped right now. And they will never have a voice.
Because no one's going to want to believe anyone. Harold on Facebook says, that's why I never watch SNL, because it's become garbage. All right, so we are going to switch over to Tommy. Tommy did an interview with Sky News. And he's going to explain here in a second in his own words why he did the interview with Sky News. But he knew going into it that they were going to take something that he said and twist it.
So here is the headline that he's going to... We're going to go backwards first.
There
goes the speaker wire again. But it looks like a really good toy.
It's not a good toy. We still have the puppy here, by the way. And she was chewing on the speaker wire.
This title is not what Tommy was saying. I don't care if I incite fear of Muslims.
Thank you.
And so we're going to kind of go a little backwards. We're going to have Tommy explain why he did the interview and how they twisted his words, and then we're going to play some of it.
Right.
So go ahead and play that.
All right. So we are...
Today's headline that's gone all around the world says that Tommy Robinson says he doesn't care if he, as in me, incites fear against Muslims. A lot of people ask why I sat down with Sky News. I sat down with Sky News to expose them. I knew exactly what they was going to do. They've done it to me for years. I wanted you, the public, to see that. So I want to now go through exactly what they've said, where this headline's come from. If you read the Sun newspaper, if you read Russia Today, if you look at LBC, all of them said, LBC, that I don't care if my message incites fear against Muslims. If you look at the report that Sky News put out, Jason Farrell puts a voiceover before he shows me answering a question. In the voiceover, he leads the public to believe that he's asked me about my opinions causing fear into Muslims. And then he cuts and edits an answer I give to a completely different question that's completely out of context. So it makes it look like I'm answering the question that he's put in his voiceover. And it has me saying that I don't care if it installs fear, so long as it prevents the rape of young children.
Villain to some, but glorified outside court today. There's no doubt he's become a public figure, but I put it to him that as with terrorism, his opinions on grooming gangs risks demonising an entire community.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I don't care if it incites fear, so long as it educates the children and prevents them being raped. Okay?
Do you really want to leave this interview with the thought that you're happy to instill fear of a community of 3.8 million people?
If you watch every speech I've ever give, okay, I make it clear that it's not all Muslims. I make that very clear every time I talk.
Now, when you see in context what I'm talking about, what I was actually talking about was an educational video that was in Holland that was put out in schools to educate young girls against the manipulative way that Muslim men in Holland, Moroccan men, were grooming young victims. So it was educational so the children could see the telltale signs. We were talking about a video, not about me or my views, nothing to do with my views, a video. And I said, I don't care if it incites fear, because of the way they've cut and edited it. And then when you look at their headline, all of the headlines, Sky News run the headline. Tommy Robinson says, I don't care if I incite fear. I didn't say the word I said it. I didn't say the word incite, I said incites. They've actually changed two words, took letters off of both words, which completely changed the context of what I said. It makes it look like I'm talking about my views, which I wasn't.
So, how many of you, when you were children, your parents said, listen, do not, under any circumstances when you're alone, talk to strangers? Now, I don't care if that incites fear in children of strangers.
Exactly.
Okay, your parents have a right to tell you who you can talk to and who
Right.
you can't talk to. And we all know
Oh,
that...
no. But it totally freaked me out when I was told as a child, if you talk to a stranger, they may be coming down the street with a lollipop and they will drag you and throw you in your van. And I'm like looking at every person with every van. I'm terrified. Oh, my gosh. Inciting fear in
How
me.
many people have... even as we're kids, have stopped us and asked for directions.
Exactly.
And then we hear our parents in the back of our brain, but we still gave the person directions.
I know. Why did
Right?
we do that?
But our parents always did that. And, okay, look both ways before you cross the street because you could be flattened like a pancake. I don't care if it incites children that they could be flattened by a pancake if they cross the street without looking right or looking left.
And you know what happens to us
what
all
about
the time?
touching the stove?
We have people that come over and the kids come up and they want to pet the dogs, and then here comes the parent screaming, "Don't touch the dog! It'll eat your whole arm off! You never touch a dog unless the person tells you you can touch the dog! You will die! A death!" They haven't, and it makes me a little bit upset. I'm like, you've just incited fear of dogs into your child. But I get it. I understand, and it's okay to put a little bit of the fear of God into people.
If Moroccan men are grooming girls in Holland, they should be afraid. They should look at Moroccan men who come up and say, "Hey, girl, you want me to take you out to dinner?" And be like, "No, watch the video at school. No, thank you."
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Moving on.
All right, we're going back to Tommy. Hang on. I can hear myself in Mom's room.
Thank you. He's got so red. That was hilarious. I've never seen you like that. It was just, he was really emotional.
You're going to watch
about
the
this.
video in its entirety. I was talking about a video. I said, I don't care if the video, they've changed the words. They haven't even done a good job in their editing. Because if you actually go on YouTube, on their own news report, YouTube, and you go into the transcripts, which you can get the transcript from the from the video, it says, Tom, I don't care if I didn't say I said it. I'm talking about a video, I'm not talking about me, okay? Now, across the whole world today, all of the mainstream media and all journalists, everyone with a blue tick, basically, on Twitter, has run the story that Tommy Robinson says he don't care if me, talking about myself, I've never said that. This is ultimate fake news. And it's gone all around the globe. And I sat down with them to show you this. What they've then done is then he's cut in. He asked me a question. There's more conversation in between. But then Jason asked me and turns around and says, "Are we going to end this conversation?" He's got an earpiece in. They sat with me for 1 hour and 15 minutes. I knew why. To get sound bites. So I had Kevin Carroll, my cousin, secretly record the entirety of our conversation. So now I can show you, in context, everything that happened and everything that was said. And you will see that the headline you've read today, in every newspaper, by all the journalists, they've changed the words and they've completely changed the context. I never once said I install fear in Muslims and that I don't care. I never said that. I was talking about a video, an educational video to prevent rape of young children. So what you've just seen and what you're about with this, and please, if you're watching this, share it. The public need to realise, and they think the public are that stupid that they can lie, manipulate and change and put their narrative into any story they want to make you think a certain way about people and their...
Let's lighten this up a little bit.
Can he sue?
I find it hilarious that stupid is stupid.
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 It's a SH.
Yeah, stupid.
I love to pick up the little idiosyncrasies.
But no, seriously, can he sue for like slander?
Libel? I hope so.
Opinions. And this is a perfect example of it. When I walked out of prison, when Jason Farrell first came up to me, I said, "What's the point in speaking to you? All you do is lie." Just completely proved that point. In the hour and 15-minute sit-down interview, we were having a conversation about grooming gangs. In every single town and city in this country, young children are being taken as slaves by gangs of Muslim men. Now, if you don't want to draw the correlation to the fact that Islam promotes and allows that, then you don't want to because you're too weak and too much of a coward to do it. But I will do it. I will tell people we need to look at why this is happening and understand why it's happening.
I'm telling you that you're potentially inciting racial hatred.
Unbelievable.
You've been out on the streets. You get, you know,
over
the course of your time as an EDL member, you were getting people out on the streets.
What race have I mentioned? What race have I mentioned?
you've mentioned Muslims, and you mentioned
Muslims aren't
talked
a race.
about
You understand
Pakistani.
that?
We've talked about Pakistani men.
Islam is not a race.
Yeah, but we've talked about Pakistani men who believe in Israel, and this is semantics.
No.
Whether it's racism or Islamophobia.
You can't make an accusation like that.
Semantics.
You can't make an accusation like that on TV and not back up. Tell me what I've said that is inciting racial hatred.
You're suggesting that people of a certain origin are more likely to be rapists or child pedophiles or take slaves.
I know it's really quiet.
You guys, it's Pakistani dudes. It's not racist. They're from Pakistan. And guess what? Pakistani isn't a race, y'all. It's a country.
It's like saying Americans.
If Jason thinks I'm inciting racial hatred by stating facts about Muslims being overrepresented with child rape cases, then maybe he thinks Sajid Javid, our Pakistani Home Secretary, should also be.
Culture. You can say culture.
Absolutely.
There are some cultures, you guys, that are cannibals.
Yeah.
I'm kind of afraid of them.
Yeah.
Kind of afraid.
They like to munch on humans.
All right. In India. I'm not gonna look at all Indian people.
Right.
Okay, but then this dude from like MSNBC or I don't know when he went to this cannibal thing. He made this whole show on it. We did a whole show on it.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, we know it's not all people from India who eat people, but yeah, if I'm going to be around them people from India, I'm going to wonder what part of me do you want to
those
eat?
people?
Okay, so when you're talking about a culture, you are talking about Pakistani culture. Okay, Somalia, ready? You've got like 99% female genital mutilation. Does that mean that all Africans want to chop genitals off? No, I'm not going to look at all Africans thinking they want to chop genitals off. But it's a cultural thing of Somalis. It's not racist. It's not Islamophobia. And you know what? I'm not even going to go. I'm just done.
Charged.
I've already been clear that I will ask difficult questions about the gangs who sexually abuse our children. There will be no no-go areas of inquiry, and I will not let cultural or political sensitivities get in the way of understanding the problem and doing something about it. We know that in these recent high-profile cases where people have been convicted, that those people are disproportionately from a Pakistani background.
Okay, so that's your head. What
That's
do you
BBC,
call that
man.
guy? No, that's not BBC. That's
He was on BBC News.
Right, he's on BBC, but he's the what? I can't keep track of who these people are. I know who he is. He's a head. I don't know. You put it in the chat. He's something. He's in the cabinet.
Well, give 30-second leg, man.
Well,
So that's actually factual by the grooming statistics and the rest. That's inciting racial hatred to you.
That you are suggesting that there is a group within society who are more likely to be paedophiles. You might say the same about the Catholic Church, for example.
There is actually. If we look at people who run churches, and there is a higher percentage chance that the person running there's a higher percentage chance that the person running the Catholic Church is going to be a paedophile than the person running a Buddhist church, or a Sikh temple. That's a fact. Okay. Now another fact is that there is a higher percentage chance that it's Muslim men for street gang grooming. That's a fact.
You're equating it to the book that they read.
No, okay. When I sit on TV and I watch Boko Haram, who are a terrorist organisation in Nigeria, when they kidnapped 200 Nigerian women, we all saw the campaign Free Our Girls. Yeah? We saw every political leader holding it. What the leader of Boko Haram said on the camera is Muhammad has commanded us to do this. That's not me equating it. That's the leader telling us why he's took those girls. Now he clearly says, we've took those girls because Muhammad commanded us to. If you look at ISIS and all the sex slaves they've taken, they clearly state this is justified under Sharia, that's why we're doing this. Now what I'm saying is, if we've got sex slaves being taken in every Islamic country in the world, and then we look at the statistics in Britain, and we see that the majority, 90% of these grooming convictions, brothers are sharing young children as victims, cousins, fathers and sons. Okay? Yeah. There's something seriously different within this community that views how this is. There's no outlaw. In fact, at each one of these court trials, all the women and all the families are calling the young girls slags.
But if you're worried about
we started talking about the educational video, which Jason and Sky have manipulated to be the answer to a completely different question.
Do you not accept making it more difficult for justice to be done? I mean, these guys are going through the justice system.
No.
What's your problem?
Okay, there was a video called Loverboy that come out of Holland, which was showing that in Holland it's Moroccans, okay, doing these crimes. In Britain it's Pakistanis, we have majority Pakistanis. If you go to France it's Algerians. Common denominator in all of them, they're Muslims. Now, if you go to Holland, they actually created an educational video to be shown in schools to warn children about these crimes. When they tried to show that in Britain in 2007, the British establishment would not allow that video to be shown because, like you just go, oh, it will incite racial hatred. So because of people
well,
with...
It's going to incite fear to suggest that when you also know that there are, like the group in Bristol...
So it's okay for the people in Holland and Netherlands to protect their children,
right?
But in the UK it's not okay.
White paedophiles.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I don't care if it incites fear, so long as it educates the children and prevents them being raped.
That is a perfect response. Okay? We grew up with like anti-drug campaign with like, this is an egg and in a frying pan, this is your brain on drugs. And I'm afraid. Okay, it incites an 8-year-old into fear of things.
A healthy fear.
Yeah, and this whole racial hatred thing is absolutely ridiculous because growing up around poor white people, I'm afraid of people who are drug addicts. I'm afraid of people who are alcoholics. I'm afraid of, I stay away from people who, don't seem mentally sound, right? And as a kid, okay, I'm cautious as an adult, but as a kid, somebody isn't put together, if they're not groomed well, we have to be able to have... to make judgment calls.
Exactly.
Just by looking at people for safety.
Right.
Okay? That is something that is learned. It is something that is taught. But it's also, just like animals can just look, like our dogs can just look at each other and they just talk to each other with their eyes. People can do that.
Yeah.
You learn that from the time you're a baby, from the time you're a child. And how to pick up on people that are loving and kind and caring and people that might be creepy. And God puts that in all of us so that we can keep ourselves safe, so that we can pick up on lies and manipulation and things like that.
Well, and that, it kind of, to me, goes into the whole judge not lest you be judged thing that the church uses to cripple Christians so that they can't make judgment calls and they can't take people out of their lives when they are unhealthy for them. You have to be able to look at someone and say, you know what you did was wrong. If I need to speak up so it protects someone else from what you did, I will do that. God can judge you. We have earthly punishments. If you're beyond the statute of limitations, then I'm going to distance myself from you and I'm going to let everyone else know that you have committed this crime. As Christians, they literally just say, judge not lest you be judged. You can't judge anything about anybody. No, we have to be able to make, the Bible says, to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Patriot Gallery.
Well, it says expose the darkness. So these acts are acts of darkness. So you have to expose darkness. If you're not exposing darkness, then you're not a Christian. That's just the way it is. And then you became a member of their crowd, and you're the sinner too. And I was just saying in my comments, we hear in UK, their leadership, their governments, like 3/4 of them are like pedos themselves. And so they want to cover it up. But then I was thinking about it, and it's like, well, their police officers are too, and their media are too, because if you cover this up, then you are guilty of the same crimes.
Exactly.
So you can say the UK media, the police, this guy interview him, they're all pedos because they are supporting it by not speaking up against it. And then you get the Muslim community. Now, if there's a Muslim community, the ones that call themselves free Muslims, then, and they go ahead and they say, child marriage is wrong, sex with children is wrong, forcing women to get married to somebody they're not in love with, and forcing them to marry when they're young or pre-planned.
Treating them as second-class citizens.
It's treating them like second-class. If there's a group that wants to say we're free Muslims, then you can say, well, all Muslims are pedophiles if they're covering this up.
Right.
And they don't say anything against it, then they are all pedophiles. And they're all guilty.
It, then you are guilty.
Yeah, if you're not sticking out against it, then you are a part of it. Anything, yeah. If you see somebody rob a bank and you don't say so and you know who they were, you're guilty of robbing that bank.
I saw something.
But that's my point is, these guys can't keep saying, well, you can't talk about all Muslims and you're saying the racial hatred. Right. Well, if all Muslims are covering up and all Muslim knows it's going on And they're not saying anything, and they're not separating themselves saying, we're the group of free Muslims. Our women are free, you know, like Iran used to be. You know, now Iran isn't.
And there are. I see
So we can say, well, Muslims are this way, but then free Muslims have set themselves free from this backward society.
Or reformed, or however you want to say it.
So you do need it would be helpful to have a differentiating groups of people so that we can know, okay, what are your beliefs?
Yeah.
Because we know about the bad ones. Let's hear your beliefs. We need you to all get on some sort of umbrella. Because I'm watching these videos come out of Iran, and half the people in Iran do not want their women to have to wear the headscarves.
Exactly.
These men are standing up for them. It's really
cheering, heartening,
and it makes your heart. You get goosebumps, and you're like, cool Muslim, I like you. You're fun.
Exactly.
I like you. You're cool. I will stick with you. You're sticking with me. These are my people.
Right.
And the left wants us all to like stick our head in the sand and not recognize that there are bad people and there are good people everywhere. And how come it's okay for you to say that a Sky News person will never shut anyone up for talking about the Catholic Church? I guarantee it. But isn't he inciting racial hatred against, Catholics? Since everything's a race, is he a Catholic phobia now? It's Catholic phobia now.
Just one thing with the Catholic Church. There are Catholics that speak out against pedos.
Actually.
And they say it. So we can say not all Catholics are this way. And they say the Pope is a black Pope.
Well,
so the people don't go along with the black Pope
but
either.
It's a little bit more than that.
But I have one more thing to say. Go ahead.
Because the Bible that the Catholics use does not substantiate pedophilia. And unfortunately, the Quran
Muhammad
does.
supposedly had an 11-year-old.
So it's...
bride.
Go ahead.
I forget what I was going to say.
Sorry.
You'll remember.
All right. So, no, the only other thing that I was going to say earlier was I remember seeing something about somebody drowning in like a icy lake or something like that, and kids standing on the sidelines and laughing. And then later on, it was found out, and some of those kids had to go to jail because they never actually reported it. The guy's life could have been saved if they had reported it. So there is something to be said for you have a responsibility when you see something bad happening to somebody, you have to report it.
Well, the whole idea about the red pill is that we have groups of people around the world who want to brainwash everybody. And they want everybody just to go along with everything. And it's the same with Muslims or Catholics or evangelicals or Protestants. And what a person has to do, we love people. We want them to think about it. And Tommy did an interview about not all Muslims. We really start talking to Muslims. They're not real Muslims. They're just name only. They've never opened the Quran. They've never really went to the mosque and worshipped or anything like that. They have no idea what they're doing. So actually doing this will make them face what they're really doing. And then they'll realize their roots are in Christianity. And all these people came in and did what the media is doing now and judges are doing now. They forced Islam on them. Because right now the media and the government is forcing UK to turn to become Muslims. They're making them become Muslims because if they're not speaking out, then they're guilty of the same thing.
You're going to finish the video?
Do you want to finish the video?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to finish Tommy's video.
Instead of playing the Sky News video, we'll let him just...
that's fine. I agree.
Okay. Now that fear is a genuine, realistic fear that people should have. Every parent who lives near a Muslim community who has a young daughter, that fear's already in them. Okay. Because they're already worried, scared, because they know what's happening. Do you know how many girls I know that I grew up with in Luton who are now wearing burqas or have been abused and sexually abused?
So you've told me you're not really interested in marriage politics. You're not really interested in that sort of democratic process.
I haven't said that. I didn't say that.
Well, you said you didn't want to become an MP. You just wanted to.
I said that what I'd love to see is I'd love to see UKIP represent the working class people of this country, and I'd love to see them galvanise and politicise the support and the movement. That's what I'd love to see.
Do you really want to leave this into with the thought that you're happy to instill fear of a community of 3.8 million people?
If you watch every speech I've ever given,
that's not what he said.
I say, in fact, let's go back to my lead video, the one that I went to prison for. Have you watched the video?
No.
Oh, you've never watched the video?
No, it's not
been
live stream.
It's not been taken down. It's online now. Okay. So you haven't watched the video. No. In that video, I make it clear that there are many young Muslims that I've grown up with who would be as disgusted as me with what's happened to these children. Okay. I make it clear that it's not all Muslims. I make that very clear every time I talk. Okay. But just because the problem is identified from coming from that community, I'm not going to stop saying it or stop educating or stop telling the truth about it. Now, what you seem to have had a problem with so far is truth and facts. You don't like the reality of what the teachings of Islam are. And you have a problem with me identifying.
No, I'm just saying.
So now you've seen the actual footage in context. Right. You've seen that I never once said, I don't care that me personally, incites fear. I never said that. It's a complete and utter lie. You've seen that Sky News in their headline have changed 2 words to fit their narrative to paint me in a negative picture. You've seen the ultimate fake news. Sky News' job and the media's job is supposed to be report the news. That was supposed to be an interview where you get an in-context conversation about my views. And they've done everything they can to change that and swing it in a negative narrative. That is not journalism. That's propaganda.
It is.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well
so
done, Tommy.
If I were Tommy, I just had a thought. I would totally have hired a physical defense trainer, and I know he can fight and things like that, but I would be like training like for like 5 hours a day in self-defense. You know, how to get out of moves, how to, you know, like
if he has to go to jail.
Yeah. Because I would that's what I would be doing. All right, so
that's actually not a bad idea. Can somebody get that message to Tommy? Hey, Tommy, you have 3 weeks. This could be a rocky moment for you to take some defense training classes.
I would be doing it all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I would be getting in my Bible, reading the Word of God.
That's actually far more important.
Do both. Play the Bible while you're training. So we played this on Friday. I want to play it again. This he was supposed to have a court date. They postponed it. But this is the people outside cheering him on.
That is such a good feeling, man. I'm so grateful to every single person that travelled here today. It's unbelievable. And it sends me.
We want Tommy out. We want Tommy out.
Now I want to go and greet every single one of them, spend time to have a photo taken with every one of them, and thank every single one of them. It's going to be a long day. But...
These are the British people, and I'm sure there's some crazy people in there. There's crazy people
Jack
everywhere.
Russell says he is training for boxing at present. I can't confirm that, but I hope it's really true. And thank you to everyone in the UK that is going out and supporting Tommy, because we don't live there, but I would if I could.
This is another angle here. So, moving on to there's a rally today.
I actually have that.
Obviously can't play. It's a whole thing.
But we could play a brief spot of it if you want up here.
We could. I want to take a mental break to another story here in the UK.
I don't need to go watching a whole bunch of. Here comes Patriot Gallery.
Well, this is really important. I think Tommy can stop defending himself and say you think all Muslims are this way. I mean, you're doing prejudice against a race, it's racism, whatever. Oh no! It's not all Muslim. It's the government. It's the media. It's the judges who support it and don't say anything against it. They're just as guilty. Yeah. So it's our government too, and our our whole parliament and the House of Lords and and all the police officers. They're all guilty.
Yes, amen. So now's a time when we have a silly story. Over 100,000 pounds of onions were destroyed after illegal migrants were found in the delivery lorries, which are trucks for everyone not in the UK. British authorities were forced to destroy over 100,000 pounds of onions, so your family Sunday roast might cost a few pence more, which were contaminated by illegal migrants discovered hiding in the lorries.
So hang on a second. I don't know that they would have had to have destroyed all of the onions if you didn't have, like, defecation on the onions.
I don't think you could sell them with the dudes just like hanging out in the onions. Like you can't sell them.
I'm just saying, I think that might have a little bit something to do with it.
Border Force officials discovered more than 20 illegal migrants who identified themselves as being from Afghanistan, Albania, Iran, and Iraq, all Muslim majority countries, in two separate incidences.
Darn.
In June 2017 and January 2018, a total of 47,000 kilograms of onions were surrendered at the port of Pool following the discovery of clandestine migrants in 2 vehicles that were being used to transport the goods. The result of the discoveries, all the produce was disposed of to ensure that no contaminated goods would end up in any restaurants or the supermarkets. So,
my mom suggests go ahead and
pounds,
plant them because they're a bulb. It's a root crop.
Could have planted them.
Regrow. Yeah. Plant them. Hilton says they should be onioned to death. You know what? Onions have a very healing property to them, so maybe this has bolstered their immune system just being around the onions. I don't know.
Yes. UK supremacist Islamist group using children to distribute extremist books. Britain's new anti-extremism chief has expressed concerns that an Islamic group which seeks to establish a caliphate with Sharia law could be radicalizing children after investigation found them using children to peddle extremist literature. Banned in more than a dozen countries, including Pakistan, Russia, China, Turkey, and Egypt. This particular group publicly disavows violence, but individuals linked to the group have carried out violent acts, such as the Islamic State fighter Jihadi John. This group has complained that British authorities have effectively criminalized certain key concepts of Islam, despite their insistence that they only allow over 16s to engage in their work. And undercover journalists who attended a number of the group's events in the past 5 months saw children as young as 10 praying and reading from the Quran at meetings. According to the Daily Mail, the reporter has sold books extremist booklets, which allegedly provided justification for suicide bombings, warned that women who leave the house uncovered would be punished, and at meetings in parts of England with large Muslim populations. So yeah, that's crazy. At a meeting in Birmingham, the Mail reported a child of 13 was selling booklets which urged Muslims to shun Western culture and its filthy promiscuity. I'm sorry, I can't speak today.
You said it right that time.
Alleging sex with animals was on the rise. I'm
not sure that's true.
So,
do you think it's true?
I don't know.
Is anyone else hearing of this? I'm not hearing of it.
All right, before we go, let's dive into. I don't want to spend too much more time in the UK because we have the rest of the Europe to cover. But this is the European continent. Leadership challenge. Boris declares, unlike Theresa May, I fought for Brexit and I believe in it. Boris Johnson is taking Theresa May to the mattresses. Boris Johnson has issued his strongest challenge to Theresa May to date, branding her Chequers plan deranged and preposterous before declaring, unlike the Prime Minister, I campaigned for Brexit and I believe in it. In his first newspaper interview since resigning from the cabinet over the Chequers blueprint for a soft Brexit, which would, he believes, render Brexit Britain an EU vassal state, the former Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary reiterated his warning that the May plan surrenders control. He was particularly vocal, but much discussed on the much discussed topic of the Northern Irish backstop, a proposal to keep the British province of Northern Ireland, as well as the rest of the United Kingdom, inside the EU's custom union. If this is the only way the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland can be kept free of custom checkpoints, he says, I remember going in to see Theresa May and her advisors and being absolutely reassured that the backstop was just a form of words that was necessary to float the negotiations off the rocks. What has happened is that the issue has been allowed to dominate in a way that we were expressly promised it would not happen. Asked by his Sunday Times interviewer what he thought about Theresa May's suggestion that people who did not back her Brexit plan were simply playing politics with the issue, the former two-time mayor of London bristled. Well, unlike Prime Minister, I campaigned for Brexit. Unlike the Prime Minister, I fought for this. I believe in it. I think it's the right thing for our country. And I think that what is happening now is, alas, not what the people were promised in 2016. He says, you can't beat Corbyn by becoming Corbyn. On the domestic agenda, for me, Brexit should be part of a really self-confident and glorious campaign to revitalize the UK economy, to invest in infrastructure, invest in housing, invest in skills for young people. One of the more striking infrastructure projects he backs is a bridge linking Northern Ireland and the wider British mainland via Scotland. What we need is to build a bridge between our islands. Why don't we? Why don't we?
Okay, my thoughts on this are I don't trust Boris Johnson as far as I can throw him. I think
That's probably not very far.
Okay, whatever. It's a saying. I think that he is utilizing the people's loss of faith in Theresa May, and he's pouncing on it, and he's saying what he knows most of you want to hear so that he can grab the position of prime minister.
Okay.
So, yes, he's saying all the right things. Great, fantastic. Just, I would say, proceed with caution. Gary says that in Canada they have legalized sex with animals. And Britt Baza says that Muslims do. They have a thing for camels and goats. This is not something I hear about very much.
Okay.
But
moving on to a separate little thing. I don't know if, Michelle, you saw this, but this has been going around. This is the Labour Party conference in 2018. They wanted to, they admit they want to take over schools.
I've never met a bad 4-year-old. I've never met a 4-year-old that was evil. So, every child has a chance, and if we give them a proper education, we'll empty our prisons, we'll have much less problems with the NHS, social issues, we'll probably not have any Tories, because we'll have brought up our kids properly. Thank you.
One word. Homeschool. It's a combined word. Homeschool. Y'all in the UK, and I know in Germany you can't at all. It's illegal.
It's awful.
Y'all need to start homeschooling, because I'm telling you, you want to know why you have these millennials coming up waving their EU banners, and it's because...
Well, we have it here in the United States too, but yes.
But we have a bigger... in the United States, we have freer thinking people. Like, we're still fighting. Like,
yeah.
Like, the young people... We're trying to pull kids out. We're still trying to pull kids out of public school too, but like nobody homeschools in the UK. They just government school. You're fine. You're fine. Just everybody's government school and a few private schools, right? And you guys, your kids.
There's several private schools, but they're all government funded.
Yeah. No, I know it's all government funded.
Exactly.
So keep that in mind. We're gonna go to Erdogan. Meeting with Mommy Miracle. What's happening in Germany and what Turkey is doing is the Islamization of Europe.
Right.
And particularly in Germany, Turkey has set its eyes. Erdogan has set its eyes on Turkey. Erdogan opens a mega mosque funded by the Turkish government in Cologne, Germany. Why would Turkey, which isn't a very rich country, be opening and funding these giant $1 million mosques? Because they want to Islamize this country. Turkish President Erdogan is set to open one of Europe's largest mosques in Cologne on Saturday as he wraps up, or yesterday, a controversial visit to Germany with police deploying in force amid planned protests. There were some critics there, I guess, but not enough. I think over here is where I have...
not that it matters, but I think it's pronounced Erdogan.
It's Erdogan or Erdogan. It doesn't really matter.
I'm just saying, if you're going to have communications with your family and friends about this...
Erdogan.
If you want to say it correctly, I think it's more like a Lord of the Rings thing.
I've heard it say both ways, so it doesn't... Michelle's always like the language
Tim,
police.
God bless you. Bill Burnett, and God love Bill, sent me something similar the other day in a message. Michelle, is everything okay? You don't look good. Something on your mind? You just look sad.
What?
Again, you have to know that I'm going to take every opportunity on this show to have a little fun. I do not take it personally. If someone doesn't look good and you are concerned about their mental, emotional, physical, well-being or state, and you say something, okay, then maybe I do. I don't know. Maybe there's something showing. Maybe you guys are seeing something deeper than I'm feeling. I don't know. I'm okay. I really am okay. I promise you. Thank you for your concern. Tim, Bill, anyone else who thought it and didn't say it, then maybe I'm looking a little bit peaked. But I'm all right. I really am okay. Let's lay that conspiracy theory to rest. For now, I really am. Thank you for your concern.
Okay, so this is Erdogan meeting with Merkel, and he laughs here as a reporter with a t-shirt that says free press on it is let out of the meeting.
Well, you have to remember, in Turkey, they're very good at jailing the press, in fact.
He is like, I can't even stand him. He's a dictator. He is like a mass murdering dictator.
So creepy. Tim says there's nothing negative. I just look distracted. Well, that's like a teacher calling a kid out. They're not paying attention.
So this is everyone cheering. This is the Turkish people in Germany. The Turkish people in Germany cheering for Erdogan. Is this Germany or is this Turkey? You tell me. You tell me, guys. You know what? If you have that much pride for your country, then maybe you should go home. Because you're in a different country now. It makes me sick.
There's a bad moon on the rise.
Makes me sick.
I don't know. It's a little bit disconcerting that he has so much support there in Germany. Almost like these people they're infiltrating. I don't know. Because the Turkish government is they jail people for dissenting thoughts. Right. You would think that a sound-minded person would not be in support of their own government that is like that.
Public service announcement. I could go into this guy, but I don't want to. You guys know this guy, Ajim Chowdhury? He is an Islamist terror supporter, will be given his own safe house and be allowed to claim benefits. You will be, not only was he living in jail off your money, no way. He will be living for free in a safe house. They're treating him better than they did Tommy on 23-hour lockdown, and Tommy is a true British citizen.
Whatever happened to Rome, right? I'm a Roman citizen!
He finishes his jail term for recruiting the Islamic State. The plan, which will cost the taxpayer tens of thousands of pounds, comes amid fears he will form a new pro-terror supergroup with other recently released extremists and individuals returning from Syria and Iraq. He and other members of his now proscribed ALM group will also be placed under surveillance, banned from the internet, and made the subject of a curfew for protection of the public and themselves. There's a lot of apprehension and concern that Chowdhury will re-energize the ALM network when he comes out. Any efforts by the government to curb the benefits for terrorists and extremists would almost certainly trigger a legal challenge. Chowdhury, 51, a trained solicitor, once described job seekers' allowances as jihad seekers' allowance and urged his followers to claim it. The London Bridge terrorist Karum Boot was linked to the network around Chowdhury, as well as suspected executioner new jihadi John and failed suicide bomber Omar Sharif, and Brustam Zamini, a teenager jailed for 22 years after plotting mass murder in London. Mizmar Raham, 35, who's jailed with Chowdhury for the same crime of drumming up support for Islamic State, will be released alongside him in coming weeks or days after both served just half of their 5.5-year sentences. Mr. Rahman is considered even more dangerous than his once tutor, security sources told the Telegraph, and the two men are prevented from meeting each other. Oh, yay.
So you're telling me that they only served out half of their sentences.
2.5 years.
And yet they're being released and put into safe houses. So if they are that much of a threat, why not just keep them in jail?
I think we should have a free Islam campaign. I mean, I was thinking about So What the other day, and he wanted just all white Germans and stuff and everything. But I was thinking about people who came here to America. A lot of them couldn't handle it. Moving to another place is very difficult. And most people came to America, they were called by God to come here. So the Holy Spirit with wisdom to help them adjust and come to a new country. Now, most of these people don't want to be where they're at. That's why they want an Islamic State there, because they want to make the country like their home country. But actually what they really want is to go home. And like somebody said the other day, Trump or somebody at the UN, I think, help these people. Jordan is helping the people go back home.
Yeah.
They are taking the refugees, but they keep them close to their borders. And then they help them go home and make their countries great again.
Or great for the first time.
Right. Well, when the Christians were in charge, they were great, okay.
They're all right.
So we really should have a campaign, free the Islam, let them go home, so they can go home and have their own little Sharia law and Islamic State at home.
All right.
A couple of random things, not random, but I want to go over some of these.
I think Britt points out maybe the reason why they did that. He says, Michelle, UK jails are unauthorized colleges of Islam. And this guy, I don't even know how to say his name, Kude, is the top lecturer. So maybe pulling him
put him on 23-hour lockdown. That's
exactly. That's what they did to Tommy. Why give him his own safe house?
Make him go crazy. Put him in a 23-hour lockdown in a prison full of Christians. Christian background people. French rapper makes songs about killing all white babies and hanging their parents. His name is Nick Conrad, and he had a song called "Hang White People." Is now taken down from YouTube. The French broadcaster BFM-TV have reported that an inquiry has been launched by a Paris prosecutor into the music video. The video is 9 minutes long, was published on the September 17th, depicting scenes from the film American History X, where a white neo-Nazi murdered a black man in the same fashion. Nick's video shows the white man shot and tortured by the rapper along with an accomplice. It calls for the killing of all white babies. He says, I go into the trenches to kill white babies, catch them quickly, and hang their parents. I'm not going to read the rest of that. That's awesome for France. France has their own issues. In France, Afghan gang beats a man with iron bars and hockey sticks.
When is there an InfoWars Europe? You never tell me anything.
InfoWars has an InfoWars Europe.
That's really cool. I was completely unaware of this.
Shocking video depicts a gang savagely beating a defenseless man with a variety of weapons in a Paris suburb, according to reports. I'm going to try to make this big.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to watch that. Holy cow. The guy's trying to hide under a car. They pull him out from under the car. They're beating him with clubs and sticks.
I'm not going to play the rest of it. I just want you to know what's going on. Okay? You just need to know. You just need to know. In Greece,
what is that?
The refugees are not happy. They're piling up food. While other people starve, while the Greek people starve, the refugees here are not happy with what they've got. They're tossing it. Disgusting. We don't want it. I don't know what this is. I'm just going to toss it. Just not grateful of anything there.
You could get no food.
Marine Le Pen warns France is becoming a totalitarian state. Our judges are being politicized. She reacted to the ordering of a psychiatric evaluation because she, said, hey, this is ISIS, and posted a picture. In Sweden, a 65-year-old woman sentenced to prison for criticizing Islam and migration. In March, the district court acquitted the woman who was prosecuted for hate speech comments made on Facebook. She has had criticized Islam and wrote that the IQ level in Sweden will fall as a result of immigration. Now, however, she is sentenced to prison by the Supreme Court. If this continues, the intelligence in Sweden will be at a goldfish level, said one of her Facebook comments. Refuse all that is to do with Islam. During the investigation, the woman whose name is Christina was subjected to 6 police interrogations and searches, something she described as a terrible experience. So you're allowed. Do you know how many people question Donald Trump's IQ level?
Yes. And he has a high IQ.
Yeah, he's a very smart person. She says, I'm terrified. She says, I'm so scared that there's nothing I can do. Will I be in prison with criminals? I have rheumatoid arthritis and deep depression, and I will lose my apartment.
Wow.
65 years old. That's what Sweden's come to. Yay, Sweden. Yay, Sweden. Also in Sweden, Swedish media and churches cover up jihad against Christian places of worship because it would shock the public. So in this town, they wrote somebody wrote jihadi things on the churches, and they didn't want to tell anybody because they're worried, oh my gosh, that I guess people will it will incite racial hatred. I love what Putin says EU politicians encourage migration and by offering large social benefits. Duh. Putin lays down just like he goes, it is up to our colleagues in Europe to decide what is best for Europe and Europeans.
I don't know, though. Putin's kind of doing the same thing, so he's able to call it out. He is encouraging migration by giving land to farmers. We want more people coming here.
Well, it depends on who he's saying he might allow, but actually, the land is only given to the Russians, but he is encouraging or welcoming of the white South Africans, but they would come and buy land.
Right.
Sweden's prime minister, though, has been ousted from the government after losing a confidence vote. So while his party stayed in the majority of the power, he, who slammed the right-leaning party as racist and stuff like that, he has lost
That's good.
His power there. And I don't know if we covered this or not too much on, I don't know if we covered it a lot on Friday. The Swedish media wait 24 hours to report on a car that plowed through a crowd of 100 children in Sweden. The story is still developing, and the police are appealing to members of the public to come forward with any information that may help with their attempts to apprehend the suspect. About 1 p.m., I believe it was on September 24th, a black or blue, dark blue Saab driving about 25 miles an hour plowed into a crowd of children and their teachers. There were 100 children and 10 teachers accompanying them at this school.
What deranged person would go into a crowd of children?
Only 2 children were injured. And there's nothing else to say about this. There's like a lockdown.
Blackout.
Yeah. And then we could just go on. An armed migrant gang turns German club into a war zone. 18 men attack staff with guns and batons.
Why isn't this mainstream media?
That's a really good question.
All over the world.
After 2 men refused entry by bouncers at a club in Germany, all heck broke loose. And
unbelievable.
We just security footage shows the men rush towards the entrances, possibly an Iraqi clan.
Yeah. Wow. And it's always with the moving of the barricades, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So what says he lives 10 kilometers away from that club?
Oh, wow. Wow.
There's gunfire right there.
Yeah.
And they're beating on somebody. Right there.
That's a gun.
That's a gun right there. That guy has a gun.
I gotta tell you, criminals will get guns.
Crazy.
Others attacked.
If that had happened anywhere else, it would have been on the news.
The 2 bouncers who earlier had denied entry to the 2 men. The group attacked the bouncers with kicks, fists, batons, and guns.
Wow.
The attack took place about 2:45 a.m. Sunday morning. Police said one of the men suffered minor injuries. Obviously, they're not a good shot. Praise the Lord. Tanzanian imam is deported from Italy for celebrating the Berlin
what says it was
Christmas
not
attacks.
gas pistols?
Okay, it was real guns, real firearms. A Tanzanian imam was expelled from Italy for celebrating the 2016 Berlin Christmas market attack and being suspected of radicalization and terror plots. He was imprisoned for robbery and drug dealing. He was found to be celebrating the Berlin terror attacks, which was carried out by a fellow Tanzanian. The attack that was committed by Anis Amri and killed 12 people and injured 56. So we have this, but I'm sure that if we talk about it anymore, we will be inciting racial hatred. So we better not stay on that for too long. An African migrant advises Italy to close its borders to prevent a civil war between Italians and Africans. Italy's interior minister received support for his anti-migration policy from an unusual side. Mohamed Konair, an African migrant who has lived more than 2 decades in Italy, advised the country to shut its borders. And that's what we're seeing over and over and over again. The people who came just normally as a normal part of like a normal migration, you know, it's like rain is great, floods are bad. Okay.
Good point.
So, as Horatio has pointed out, he has a lot of people. He has a lot of friends from the religion that shall not be named. The people who maybe came from Afghanistan you know what I mean, have come or came from like Afghanistan in the 90s or something, or leaving the late 80s, and they became British and they became part of the system. Totally different than what we see now with a push from George Soros grabbing these unruly, crazed young men,
right.
And you see them just going wild all over the place. And it's not because their color, their skin. It's actually not necessarily because of their religion. I don't know what's going on. I honestly, if I could put my finger on it, I know it's like New World Order, take over the world thing, because for all intents and purposes, normal, just people coming into the UK were not blowing things up for 100 years. This is a new thing that we're dealing with right now. I mean, this is new. It's not. I mean, it's absolutely just a totally different thing that nobody can quantify it. When you try to talk about it, nobody lets you even talk about it. It's the thing that shall not even, we can't even discuss it. This is an ongoing, developing situation here.
Good point from John O'Connell. Are we going to get to this tsunami in Indonesia?
I wasn't.
Okay, well, there was because we talked about it on Friday. Mm-hmm. There was a massive tsunami in Indonesia. I think it was as a result of an earthquake that was like a 7.4.
7, yeah, or
something ridiculous like that. Massive damage done as a result of this. So you can pray for the people there,
right?
Even though I think that they are largely a Muslim country. Mm-hmm. There, I think they're like one of the largest, if not the largest. Yeah. But the difference is, here's the thing: when Donald Trump put in his travel ban, you know, Indonesia wasn't on there.
I don't think so.
It was not on there, and so it wasn't a Muslim ban.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's not that all Muslims are bad, but we have to be able to take, like Tommy says, listen, we've got these Pakistani guys, we've got these Albanian people coming in.
It's a cultural thing.
We have to be able to say, you know what? Whatever's going on over there, and I don't know what it is, it's creating some bad mamma jammas, and we can't let them in. So you have to be able to call that out.
So this is what Mohamed Konair says. He says, the global oligarchy wants to empty Africa of its human resources, bring young men here, knowing the economic difficulties that Europe is dealing with now, bring them into Europe knowing that they will not have a future. Speaking from his experience, a lot of foreigners who came to Italy are still unemployed. We, who have been here for 20 or 30 years, foreigners who live here today, are almost all unemployed. Each one gets by because after 10 to 20 years in a land, I don't know if that translation is right. According to Konair, the results are devastating as young African migrants are poorly prepared for Western society and speak poor Italian. Therefore, these youths will be thrown onto the street without any assistance, without any means, speaking poor Italian, not knowing Western culture, and what will happen? A war among the poor, that is the lower class Italians who are in difficulty, will find themselves confronted with thousands, hundreds of thousands of hungry Africans. The African migrant says there's only one solution to prevent that situation, and that is to shut the borders. Let's just let him speak here.
Chiunque osa rimettere in causa queste clausole
Let me start over here.
Hang on, wait. Let Patriot Gallery say what she's going to say before she loses it.
Well, it's just, I was thinking about the warlords in Africa and how they use children, how they go into villages and they just take people and say, if you don't fight with us, we'll kill your wife, we'll kill your children. And they do all this brainwashing. So even the Democrats we saw this weekend, they're trying to brainwash everybody into believing this woman when everybody was sound-minded could see she's lying and acting like a little child.
And that Kavanaugh was sincere.
When I'm her age and you see my voice is deeper, I'm not talking like a little girl
like,
because
hey,
I'm older and your voice gets deeper and you get more mature as you get older. You don't talk like a little girl when you, so you can see that was an act and see CIA.
Thank you. Mom, for pointing that out.
Because you can see she's CIA. She was brainwashing people and trying to use these manipulative CIA, brainwashing techniques on people.
Right.
But that's people who fight for power and want power. They do that.
They do mind games.
Yeah, and so in Muslim areas, and what's happening to these people? Why are they doing this? It's people fighting for power. They use the weaker people who can easily be brainwashed into, oh, you'll get Muhammad or God will reward you if you do this, and you do it for God. They take advantage of those who, and they keep them dumb and stupid, like our public schools who fight for power try to keep us dumb and stupid, but we're not. So if we get the information, we can rise to a higher intelligence. And the same with the Muslims, they can rise to a higher intelligence.
Yes.
If they can find the truth. Now, what I was going to say, in all these countries, wherever Christianity goes, aside from the Catholic Church, wherever Christianity goes, people are free because they seek the truth, because Jesus and the Holy Spirit leads us to seek the truth, and you set yourself free. Like this whole rising around the Western societies from globalism is because we are rooted in Christianity, and it's just in us because God's in us, because God has called our great-great-great-grandfathers. The Bible says for 1,000 generations you'll be, saved. And so whether you know or not, you're a Christian, even though you say I'm an atheist. I see Lionel do this all the time. He was raised in a Catholic school and all this stuff, but all this Christianity comes out of him. But he says he's atheist, but it's in you because your grandparents. One of my good friends, she's very moral, but she says she's not a Christian, but her great-great-grandmother started America on Christian principles, was a great-great Quaker.
You can't get it out of you.
You don't get it out of you because God has promised your grandparents.
Right.
He'll take care of you and lead you.
Right. Yeah, Leah watched the body language on that Christine Blasey Ford, and they talked about how she made herself small like a child.
And she talked like this because people are more likely to believe like children, and they want to believe if you make yourself small and you talk with a high-pitched voice, people are more likely to believe you because we want to help children and people. And that's why that's the way kids talk.
Right.
Kids talk in a high-pitched voice. Kids are small. But she was leaning forward and making herself small, and she was talking like this the whole time.
But then she didn't. And then sometimes she'd like snap out of it. Sometimes she would like hold her neck back and her head back like this in a really odd, like, demonic position in my position.
There's a lot more to that. Maybe we'll get to this week.
And I say that whoever dares to challenge these colonial clauses is killed. The whole world knows this. Everyone knew this, but everyone was silent. Why? Because everyone has interest in Africa. After assassinating Gaddafi, Libya, which became a no man's land, where there is a puppet government, where the various tribes have retaken control over each other in their areas. It has become a gap where the guys pass through, but also this is part of a plan because of the global oligarchy. Wants to empty Africa of its human resources and bring young African men in here, knowing the economic difficulties that Europe is dealing with now. Bring them into Europe knowing that they will not have a future. We who have been here for 20 or 30 years, foreigners who live here, today are almost all unemployed. Each one gets by because after 10 to 20 years in a land, they succeed a little in understanding how things work. But all of these youth, they are bringing in by the hundreds of thousands. One thing is clear, none of them will have the international protections, nor political asylum. Therefore, those youths will be thrown onto the street. Without assistance, without any means, speaking poor Italian, not knowing Western culture, what will happen? A war among the poor, that is, the lower class Italians who are in difficulty will find themselves confronted with thousands, hundreds of thousands of hungry Africans. Where will we end? A civilized clash. Civilizational clash. Therefore I say, and I repeat, Italy needs to keep the Italian borders closed. There are so many documents written on this phenomenon. We have been talking about it for 10 years. Before the thing became so intensified, I was speaking about it already on the internet. People thought I was crazy when I said that it was not true. that they were paying 10,000 euros to come here. They responded it wasn't true. In Africa, someone who has 10,000 euros, what will he come here to do? Doesn't make sense, because with this amount, one could build a life in Africa. They create propaganda in Western Africa saying that to you that there is the possibility of crossing the desert when you are in Libya. The stretch of the sea is so, I don't know how many kilometers to Italy, you understand. And these young men hoping if they arrive in Europe because they still have this myth, the myth, that they have the possibility of making a future for themselves. This is today a utopia. This is today all utopia. It is impossible to explain to them that the situation in the West is no longer like this. In Italy, 250,000 young people leave every year and go look for work in other countries. Just from Italy. If the Italians are leaving to other countries to look for work, what are the foreigners gonna find? It's not possible. The serious thing is if at least these young men were redistributed. If the Dublin Accords permitted these young men to ask for political asylum in the country they wanted, Italy would not have had all this burden. But the Dublin Accord says that a person is forced to ask for asylum protections at the first port of disembarkation. Last year, 630,000 young men entered here in Italy.
That's amazing.
Therefore, all of this will be at the expense of the Italian government.
Wow.
It means the Italian government will have to run this flow of people because when they arrive in Germany, they take them back to Italy and blah, blah, blah. So, at least somebody's saying something.
All right, so we have about 10 minutes left of our show. Like I said, we have to leave early for a birthday party for our little cousin. So what else do you want to cover?
Do you want to go to the mail call?
I would love to go to the mail call, but I wasn't sure if we were going to have time to do it.
Let's do it. That's fine.
All right, so I think Lee and I are going to take turns to read this letter because it's long, and it's hard to just stand there while somebody is reading. So there are 4 pages, and we'll each take a turn reading a page. So this letter is from our anonymous American in Europe. You guys might remember she wrote to us from the UK a couple of months back. Dear Leah and Michelle, this was written on the 30th of August. It's the anonymous American in Europe. I was very surprised and honored to discover you'd read my letter on air. I lost track of the show during a few busy weeks of travel, but checked a few times at BitChute and didn't see any new ones. I later checked YouTube and saw a month's worth of material to catch up on and heard my letter. It was a bit cringeworthy as it was rather a stream of consciousness, but this will be a much more expansive and orderly letter. As I'm sending this from Skopje, Macedonia, I've included a couple of keepsakes from the Mother St. Teresa Memorial House. There are statues of her throughout Albania and Macedonia, and even a highway named in her honor. I wanted to say that your last few shows have been outstanding. I always look forward to hearing the news compilation commentary, spiritual insights, and accent impersonations. The rest of this letter will include a variety of anecdotes, references, and more of possible interest. In my last letter, I mentioned being a Europhile. Indeed, I lived over 8 years in various countries, following a dream of studying and working in Europe. The peak period was a time of Euro optimism, following a dream of studying and working in Europe. Oh no, I read that already. Sorry. In the mid to late 2000s, my Euro Studies program seemed to take a balanced view of the EU with such issues as the democracy deficit and the corporate welfare of CAP, how it hurts small farmers and keeps out imports from developing countries, being openly discussed, as well as questions like whether the Eurozone, was or is an optional currency area. But underlying everything was the assumption the EU was necessary and good because of historical national tensions. Neo-functionalism was an early idea of how to interlock countries at the essential level of key industries, e.g. the ECSC, the forerunner of the EU/EEC, in order to foster deeper integration at all levels. The nationalists of Europe, who resisted ever closer union, she puts that in quotes, were regarded as obstacles to a good vision or even ignorant, I can read, simpletons. One of those ignorant simpletons. At that time, I genuinely believed in the necessity of the EU, given its concomitant benefits, greater efficiency from the common market and single currency, and the oft-cited notion that the countries of Europe needed to be united to be relevant on the world stage still. I would not have advocated a European army per se, or the relinquishment of key areas of sovereignty. In fact, I was skeptical that member states would act outside of their own interests, which is true normally, but it seems the government have ceded enormous power to Brussels, and open borders have largely betrayed their people's interests. My studies were part of aspirations to work in an international capacity, and this was years after I'd worked for a Soros-related organization as a teacher. Now, she does put an asterisk there. Before send-off of all program participants, before send-off, all program participants received a copy of an article called Beware Billionaires Bearing Gifts, which appeared in Forbes 1997. It discusses how Soros funded left politicians in Eastern and Central Europe, keeping many former communists in power, and describes an article he wrote for the Atlantic Monthly called Capitalist Threat, the Capitalist Threat as pretentious, and several books as all impenetrable to the point where some people think Soros is pulling their leg. I didn't land my dream job and my ambition waned, all probably a blessing in disguise. I was still working in Europe in the late 2000s when my feelings about the EU began to change. Maybe it was the viral video of Nigel Farage bashing Mr. Van Rompuy. Maybe it was a desire to support the underdog. I don't know my precise red pill moment about the EU, but I'd been aware of and sympathetic and open to various conspiracy theories for years. Perhaps it was also a mistrust of elites. Even though I'd aspired to an elite career, I found that the patriotism and common sense of populism resonated more in my core self than the elite narrative. The truth is that the elites, at least in the media, are terrified of the hoi polloi entering their sphere of influence. As Sargon of Akkad has recently pointed out, the elite protected class is rapidly taking measures to keep outsiders out through internet revolution.
While the red-pilled among us recognize certain truths as blatantly obvious, the inability to see and accept them by the brainwashed and indoctrinated seems to be tied to the core beliefs of a particular identity issue. I'm not expressing myself well, but you actually are, so you did a good job.
She did, yeah.
But I simply mean it is dearly impossible to persuade anyone who isn't ready. Among Brits, for example, I found many are skeptical of Boris Johnson, regarding him as an opportunist, and regard the hardcore Brexiteers as fanatics or simply annoyances. Many vote for whatever party they were born into. Labour, especially Labour. I was recently talking with a British woman I met on the road. On Tommy Robinson, she was adamantly opposed to him for his EDL past and his video casting outside of the grooming trial. She already thought of him as a criminal, but said that in this case, it was inappropriate to taint a trial that needs to carefully consider the evidence.
I'm going to let you guys just peruse this map a little bit so you can have an idea of where she's writing from in Macedonia. Go ahead.
Regardless of what anyone thinks of her position, it was at least a thoughtful one. I had just listened to your show in which you mentioned the BBC's fear-mongering about post-Brexit food shortages, etc., and mentioned this as an example of media dishonesty. She was quite savvy about media bias in the UK, saying there was basically the Murdoch press and the Guardian is the opposite. She also noted that the press has little else to report about during the summer lull, and interestingly mentioned that a woman on the Dragon's Den, not sure which one, has been feeding the press anti-Brexit stories. Finally, I mentioned the censorship issue, citing numerous examples from the Snoopers Charter to Lauren Southern's case. To my shock, she said she was heartened that the police were targeting someone other than minorities or Muslims, seeming not to recognize the harsh reactionary treatment of a 20-something Canadian media personality whose only offense has been raising uncomfortable issues. Granted, I see her point that overly profiling bad guys from particular groups creates lots of bad will and is unfair, but targeting anyone who openly questions the official narrative is also very bad. To close out the elite EU topic, I wanted to share a quote from J.C. Juncker, Jean-Claude, that went viral a while back. Its original context was the introduction of the euro, but a Slavic MEP, Richard Sulik, read it on the German talk show Anne Will just after the Brexit vote. This would have been June 26, 2016, to illustrate people's distrust of and resistance to Brussels. We make a decision on something behind closed doors and wait a while to see what happens. If there's no outcry or resistance, because most don't even comprehend what's been decided, then we proceed further step by step until there's no turning back. There's a slightly different official translation that's appeared in various press articles. Sulik adds afterward, "That's the Europe people don't want." This entire program was a great illustration of most Germans' inability to comprehend the Brexit vote, and the former British ambassador to Germany, who represented Remain, reminded me of Thomas Merkel apologizing for Trump on Good Morning Britain. If interested, the show is on YouTube. It's I think it's at GROB, Britain, Britannian. SAG plus, or maybe you can just try to put that.
I'll try to find it and put it in the.
The quote is read at the end during the closing statements.
A final note on this subject: I followed German media coverage running up to the Brexit vote and was extremely annoyed by the completely biased coverage. I ultimately gave up on it entirely. I will now embark on a brief Islamo-cautious section. Brilliant word coined by Leah. I want to mention a recent encounter I had with an Albanian Muslim couple who hosted me in their home, as well as a speculation about prospects for peaceful coexistence. The encounter involved a lengthy discussion of the Bible plus Islam. I was explaining a brief overview of the Bible, especially the Old Testament, as the story of Israel as a distinctive people meant to showcase the uniqueness of God's ways and ultimately to provide salvation to the world. I then mentioned how when they fell away, God sent prophets before calamity struck. The husband kept saying the Jews killed the prophets, and this made me wonder if this is something they are taught that feeds their anti-Semitism. Like, as an example, you've mentioned on your show that Jew is used as a slur as part of an ingrained hatred. On prospects for coexistence, I recently traveled in several Balkan countries where Christian/Muslim coexistence seems quite natural, which seems to provide a hopeful model, recognizing the moderate, largely secular, model of Islam in these countries. Lebanon and perhaps Syria were also examples, though Brigitte Gabriel tells the story of Muslim aggression in Lebanon. Muslims peacefully lived in various parts of Europe for decades, and the radicalism and Sharia movements are a recent phenomenon. That said, history shows the spread of Islam across vast swaths of the world through migration and demographics, followed by domination and intolerance toward other religions. At this point, I have more questions than answers, and only limited knowledge of the historic periods of Muslim rule, like the Ottoman Empire and the Moorish Spain. The goals of the elites seem to be at odds with visions of an Islamic future. However, won't Muslims also oppose mandatory vaccines, the poisoning of food, air and water, and endless surveillance? Could we all be united in fighting our common enemy, at least in this respect? 2 final points on TRTSNBN. I don't know what that is. Do you? I'd recommend to anyone interested a series done by North Point Community Church on the Star, the Cross, and the Crescent, which features testimonies of a Jew, Judy Ramir, and a Muslim, Ashfin Zafat, about how they came to faith in Christ. Not sure if available at North Point's websites and archives. I will try to look that up and see if I can put it in the description. Also of interest may be an episode of Call the Midwife, which deals with FGM, although set in the 1960s. A Somali woman is inspected as part of a prenatal exam and her FGM is discovered. The midwives and doctor are horrified, but the woman vehemently defends the ritual as a deep part of her culture. That means she is a pure Somali woman. In the end, the family sends off a young girl with her grandmother on a ship to Somalia. I'll conclude with a few more miscellaneous references and recommends. Pastor Matt Trewhalla has been advocating the doctrine of lesser magistrates as a tool to combat unjust laws. His book, she hasn't read it yet, but she needs to, that's what she says, details its original context of the Magdeburgen 1550 and modern applications. In short, citizens petition the government at the most local or more local level, that is the lower magistrate, to counter unjust laws. This forces politicians who'd sooner pass the buck to take responsibility on key and often controversial issues.
She says she recommends anyone, particularly Americans, Daniel Hannan's A Letter of Warning to America, which highlights the dangers of a bigger, more European-style government, whereas Europe is centralized and stifles being entrepreneurs. The American model, at least as established at its founding, was the opposite, loss of freedom. And as Dennis Prager says, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. You might also enjoy a vintage video available on YouTube of Evie Tornquist singing Pass It On at a Billy Graham crusade in Seattle. as she's of Swedish, I think, heritage, and Seattle is historically Scandinavian, she included a version in Swedish. It's still got a lot of Scandinavian heritage, including looks like Scandinavia folk dance society, lots of Swedish pancakes, and the Bergen Park dedicated by King Olaf of Norway in Ballard. There's much more I'd like to say, but I've got to get this in the mail, and my hand's about to fall off after multiple drafts. It's great to be part of the Resistance Chicks LLC family. I hope you can use one of
Debbie, the Etsy, our shirts that she made.
Images as a logo. She says, call me Jane, the anonymous American in Europe, or just Jane. Please don't feel obliged to read the whole letter on air, but just a shout out would be appreciated.
So, Jane, anonymous American in Europe, thank you very much for that. I do have one last little email that I want to read. It's from Thomas from Austria. It's an email. I am still watching your videos and think you are very honest and truthful, and that's why I prefer your videos over those of the mainstream media. Thank you. I will probably also watch your videos in the foreseeable future. I'm quite sure of that. There was a storm here last night, but when I walked in my garden this morning, everything was fine, and I was glad that the 24 pumpkin plants I planted this year in the spring were still there and well. None of the pumpkins did run away also yet, so I'm going to have a lot of pumpkins to eat in the fall and winter. A lot more than last year where I only had 4 pumpkins. I am going to eat a lot of quinces too because I have a quince tree in my garden, which is doing great, and I'm going to get a lot of fruit this year. However, the political storm that's brewing this week seems to be just starting. I really want to see the Republicans confirm Trump's nominee for Supreme Court this week, because if the Democrats cannot show evidence for their accusations, they should just be ignored by the Republicans at this point. Everyone has to be assumed innocent until proven guilty, and it needs evidence to prove someone guilty.
I just love that people all over the world in Austria are covering this.
I do too. I was thinking the same thing. I also think it is necessary that all the FISA documents, all the text messages from Strzok, Comey, and Orr, and their accomplices, and the Steele dossier are being released for the public to see without redactions, because the people have a right to know the truth and to make their own decisions based on that truth. I repeat myself here because I think this is important. The people have a right to see the whole truth and have to be shown the whole truth without redactions, because if people shall be responsible for their choices, they have to know the truth first. If the Democrats don't return to sanity, they are probably going to get slaughtered in future elections. This is very true, very observant. Why is Trump even putting up with this CRAP? We don't use that word here. Did not the founding fathers warn of political parties? If a president who is elected by the people can't work with his agenda because of obstruction by those parties, isn't it time to change this party system? I'm really curious to see how this plays out over the next few days. And I also think that Britain should just leave the EU with no deal, because a hostage also doesn't negotiate with its kidnapper, and the hostage just escapes at the first chance it gets. Very good point. Getting out as soon as possible is the best way to deal with this reincarnation of the Third Reich called the EU. I am just stating my opinion in this matter. I liked your garage video also. Thank you, Thomas. I hope I'm going to see more videos like that. And by the way, with fruits, it is a kind of like with the truth. I want my fruits without worms, and I want my truth without redactions, because that is necessary if if you want to enjoy both the fruits and the truth. Did not one of the founding fathers speak of a tree of liberty? I wonder what fruits this tree might bear. What would the founding fathers have said when some modern day politician told them that they want the truth to be redacted? I am guessing it has something to do with a rope and a tree, perhaps.
So,
greetings from Austria.
What makes
Thomas.
This so fantastic?
This is why I want y'all people to write us letters. Is it too much to ask? Jane and Thomas and the rest of you out there, write us letters.
This is what is so fantastic, because our country was made up of people who came from
all over the world.
But primarily from a Western civilized Christian culture who believed in freedom,
right? Who
believed in liberty. So you had people from Austria and Germany and Italy and Sweden, and you had people from this Christianized world because they heard that there was a country where you could be a Christian and you could live free.
Exactly.
And you could be an entrepreneur and you could start your own business.
Right.
And that's what built, I have goosebumps all over me. That's what built this country. Those people are still in Austria with those same dreams. And what we have in Donald Trump, and I have goosebumps from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, is now we have an opportunity. We have people rising up and they're like, okay, let's make our own country great again.
Exactly.
Why are 250,000 Italians leaving? Because they're stifled from creating their own businesses. Every young man should be trained in an apprentice or be able to start their own business, start their own business. But when you are taxed, excuse me, to oblivion, when you have regulations and you can't, oh, hey, I'm going to just start my own carpentry business and I'm going to just start making chairs and tables, but no, what's the EU rules on this? I can't send too many I can't sell it to my fellow Italians without this tax. I can't sell it to French people because they have too many. It's like so many rules. They stifle it. So like you have to work for a job. You have to work for a person. That's what's different. And America is kind of getting away from that, but we're trying to bring it back. Right. So what I love about these letters is it's showing that they would call it populism. I love that you know our founding fathers because the spirit is worldwide.
It's truth. It has nothing to do with America. It really is just a worldwide truth. So on that note, we are going to get going. We're not going to sing a song today like Leah had said that we would because we don't have time. A birthday party is unfortunately more important. We got to get Grandpa.
Well, the letters were
over there,
song.
and the letters were our song. Exactly. So thank you guys for being here for our European and UK news show at 1 p.m. today, Sunday. We will see you back for sure on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully sometime in the middle. We're going to hopefully start progress on the deck, at least digging some holes for some footers.
I want my onions without refugee poop.
And bring you guys along for that. So thank you to our moderators. Thank you to everyone who was here today. Remember, we do have a P.O. box if you want to send us letters. 107 Milford, Ohio 45150. You can send me an email, but sometimes those stack up and it takes me a little while to get through them. So we love you guys. God loves you. God bless. And have a wonderful rest of your Sunday here. Leah, can I have my wand of power?
I was just looking at any comments.
Right. But we have a birthday party to
Okay, guys. Bye.
I love you guys. Adios.
It's cold.